Welcome to Laricy Live. You want to know what's happened in the real estate market? Then this show is for you. I'm your host, Matt Laricy. So today, we are talking about the international market making a comeback. What we did is we collected some questions to kind of go over this stuff. And, a big thing that has been missing in the market is the international market. It makes up a big portion, specifically in the high-rise markets. So we wanted to kind of touch base on what's been happening with that market pretty much in the past 18 to 20 months. So question number one, what's happening with the international market? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing is happening with the international market. Normally I have about 20% of my own personal sales is international. I've had one sale this year that's international. But, it makes up a huge portion of the market. But as of today, right now, we're towards the end of August, nothing is happening with the international market. Absolutely nothing. How did COVID impact the international market? It cut its legs off. I mean, who from different countries is buying in America if you can't come to America? And let's face it, America's been a mess the past 18 to 20 months. No matter what side you sit on, the country's been a mess. And I don't think a lot of people want to invest in us right now, specifically with them not being able to come here. Did travel restrictions impact the international market? Yeah, of course. Absolutely. If you can't come here, why would you buy here? A lot of people buy because they want to have a place in Chicago for when they visit. Well, that's not happening. A lot of people want to buy because they want to invest. Well, when the market's crap and previously the rental market, now the rental market's hot today, but I'm saying previously when it was bad, why would you want to do it? I've been telling everybody that, the best time to buy is when everybody else is scared, and when there's blood in the water, that's when you strike. But, not anybody listened to me. And now the market's coming back. The international market's not back yet. But with them not being able to travel here, it's cut the market down, and it's really made it pretty much non-existent. Where do most international clientele come from? Actually, the number one international buyers in Chicago is from Canada. So, but you do get a lot of people from Canada, Mexico, China, India, Russia, Middle East. Those are the main ones I see. I mean, yeah, sure, of course, I see people from Japan and, South Africa and all these other countries across the world. But I'm saying the main ones are the ones I mentioned. Those are the bread and butters. Why do most international clients buy in Chicago? They like the city. We're the third largest city in the country. We don't get as much international clientele as a San Fran, LA, New York, Miami, now Seattle type areas, but we get a lot. We get a lot of international clients. And they like it too because it's a big rental city. So it's an easy rental for these people. What types of properties do they typically buy? A lot of them will buy high rises. And they like high rises because they're maintenance free. So if they're going to live here as an in-town, they'll do that. There is a huge sector which we don't work, but they buy a lot of the 2 to 12 unit buildings. That's not a market we work, but that's another portion they buy. But mostly I see my international market buyers buying in the main areas like River North, Cedarville, Gold Coast, Old Town, West Loop, just big buildings that are kind of maintenance free. How often do they spend time in the city? If it's an international client, my biggest sale still to this date was a guy who says that he comes in once a year, if that. A lot of them just listen. If you got hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe billions, who knows? You don't know what to do with your money. You don't know what to do with your cash. So you want to get it to America and have it sit here. And it's just, honestly, it's probably a legal way to launder your cash. But in another way, it's just another asset to have on your belt. And that's one of the things that I think is going to happen. One of the reasons why I think the international market is going to come back so much is because inflation is on the rise, and a great way to protect your money against inflation is put into a hard asset. Guess what's a hard asset, guys? Real estate. And guess what's going to be happening soon? International travel will come back at some point. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not 3 months from now, maybe not a year from now, but at some point, people are going to go from one country to another country. It's going to happen. I know a lot of people think people will never go to other countries again, but it will. And when that happens, people are going to want to start buying assets again. Do most international buyers also own properties in other cities? Yeah. You know what? A lot of these international buyers, it's like having a notch in their belt. They want to be able to brag to their other rich friends and say, hey, I got a place in Chicago, New York, Miami, Vegas, Seattle, LA, etc. So, it's a big portion of having places in numerous cities in America. Have you seen any recent shifts in international market buying activity? I have not. I am starting to get just a little bit of calls and interest from people internationally speaking who are saying they're thinking about buying a place in Chicago. Now, I'm telling you, I think that's going to explode, especially with people going back to school. Because one thing I didn't mention is a lot of these people are buying places for their kids, and they go to universities. And if their kids going to universities, it's a great way to be able to, get in the market here and figure out if you like Chicago or not. And then once they buy a place for their kid who's going to the universities, they're like, hey, now that I'm visiting my daughter or son, I feel like I kind of like Chicago. And guess what I want to do? I want to get in a nicer spot rather than living in a hotel room. So, that's a big portion of the international market as well. And one of the reasons why I'm starting to see a tiny bit of recent shifts in it is because I'm seeing some of my clients reach out to me because their kids are going back to college and they're sick of sitting in a hotel room. In fact, my one international sale I have was just that. The guy's daughter went back to school this fall, and he's like, listen, I want a cheap place. Now, for him, cheap was $1.5 million. I thought $1.5 million was kind of expensive, but to him, it was pocket change. And he wanted to get it for a place to, kind of throw a suitcase when he comes in to visit his daughter. And that's a huge portion of the market, specifically in the high rises, that we haven't seen. How much of the buyer and seller markets do international clients make up? I would say maybe 15%, maybe more. I don't have a statistical data behind that, but I do think it makes up a large portion of the market. Now, here's the thing, is that last year, 2020 went down as one of the worst years for international buyers in American history. So if nobody was buying before, you can be one of the people who are like, well, I guess international buyers are never going to buy in America again. I'm not going to think like that. I personally think people still like America. I still think America is number one in the world. And I think a lot of people want to have a little bit of a bragging piece in the good old United States of America. So I do think people are going to come back and start buying it. So I think that the international market is going to come raging back. And I think it's going to start making up 15 to 20% of the sales in the city. And I think it's going to be huge. How expensive is Chicago compared to international cities? We're cheap. We are like dirt cheap. We're like embarrassingly cheap. Like I just said, this one guy was like 1.5 gets me this with a view. Is this like for real? Guys, you go to Paris, $1.5 million gets you a shoebox. You go to Shanghai, same thing. You go to Singapore, you can't even get a parking space, okay? So we are ghastly cheap compared to any other big civilized city in the world. They actually literally put us as the most affordable city in the world for a big city, and it is what it is. So a lot of people come here. If you got $5 million, you can pretty much buy whatever you want in Chicago. You got a $5 million budget, you literally can get whatever you want. I've had clients, and some of my biggest sales are international sales where people are like, hey, I have $5 million to spend. They only end up spending 2 or 3 because they're like, I can't believe I could get this much for $2 or $3 million. Like this, it boggles my mind. Now, for us normal people, I don't know about you guys, but to me, $2 million is a lot of money. Okay, I'm like, man, $2 million is a lot of money. But to a lot of people, $2 million is like, they could stand up and lose it on the bench here, and they don't even know it left their pocketbook. And when they see how much their dollar goes for, that's all they need to spend. These guys could spend $30 million if they want to, but they just don't need to in a city like Chicago. So to them, they feel like we are just kind of like a bargain. In fact, most of my clients that are international think we're a bargain bin. That's what we are. Why do you think international buyers are attracted to Chicago instead of other big cities? I mean, listen, they're not attracted to other cities, but I will tell you, a big attraction I see a lot of people come from, this is just my personal experience, is a lot of people come here for a job, whether it be in tech or finance. A lot of them have their kids go to school here, or a lot of them, we have some of the best hospitals in the world, and a lot of them, their kids start becoming a resident or a surgeon in one of these things. And for anybody out there that knows anything, when you become a doctor day one, you don't have any money. And a lot of these people are in debt. Now, of course, if they're coming from rich international families, they're not in debt. But I think we can all agree on one thing. Even if they're not in debt, they're not raking in cash at their first job as a doctor. So what a lot of them do is they're like, they come to Chicago, they buy a place, they help their kids buy a first place because they have money. And then because their kid's here working at the hospital, they'll come here and visit and they're like, wow, this is a great city I want to buy. And then guess what? Their friends are saying like, hey, how's your daughter doing in Chicago? And they're like, oh, she's doing great. I visit her all the time. I love Chicago. And they're like, well, maybe I'll buy a place in Chicago too, et cetera. So that's another big reason. It's people buying places for their kids, and then they're buying a place, and then they're telling their friends that the place is a Chicago school, and then they're coming. So that's one of the reasons why people buy it. But definitely most international buyers that are wealthy are going to buy, if they can only buy one place in America, they're most likely going to buy in like LA, San Fran, Miami, or New York before they come to Chicago. But we're getting up there. Well, we were getting up there. Whether or not that'll change, not sure. How does the value of U.S. dollar impact international investor traffic? I mean, obviously, if the dollar is weak, or obviously if the dollar is doing well, like, it impacts the market. But I mean, listen, most of these people buying aren't concerned that much with how strong or weak the dollar is. They really don't care. To them, money is just like an accessory. It's like a piece of clothing. It doesn't matter to them. A lot of these guys don't know what to do with their money, and that's why they're buying in the city. The big dollar market is big. Now, what we have to realize is that when you don't have a market like this existing for 18 to 20 months, and people are wondering why the market's struggling, it's like, well, the international market makes up so much of the market that, with the economy doing as well as it can, it's unheard of that the international market hasn't come back. And that's why I think, remember I tell you right now, I think the fourth quarter is going to be when the international market starts to make a comeback. I'm not going to say it's going to be like international market's going to be like a floodgate and these guys are going to rush in. I'm going to start saying that you're going to start to see the trends, a shift a little bit, where all of a sudden we're going to start seeing international sales start to trickle in, and that's going to start. One of the reasons why I think 2022 will be one of the greatest markets for big cities is the international market is going to start to slowly come back in Q4, and 2022 is going to be a huge year for international buyers in America. Do international investors typically make a trip to the U.S. to purchase property, or do they do it virtually? A lot of them won't personally come here, but they'll have a family member or a friend come here. And I think that's a big problem, is that they haven't had anybody come here. And a lot of them want to see what's happening in the city because, we did have the looting and we've had COVID, and people want to know if it's kind of like safe enough for them to come. So they want their friends or relatives to be able to walk around and give them a flavor of the city, and they just haven't been able to come here. And I think that's one of the main reasons why the market's been slower for international. I think a lot of them too are nervous to see what's going to not only happen in our country, but also in other countries, and see how that might impact the market. How do you meet international clients? Mostly I meet them online. I have a huge online presence. So they just Google and I come up. That's the biggest way to do it. The second biggest way is referrals. We crush it with people from China and India. And, if you're from China and India and you don't know anybody in America except for your buddy who just bought a place in Chicago, and you're like, hey, did you like your guy in Chicago? And they're like, yeah, we felt he was good. Hopefully they say great. But regardless, that's a reason why we get a lot of those clients. So it's mostly either Google or word of mouth. Do any of your international clients have dual residency with another country? I mean, most of them do. Most of them are in more than one country. Like there's like America would be a second. If they were citizens here, it would be like kind of like their second citizenship. What do international clients need to know about insurance policies? Nothing. Our insurance policies in America are far greater than pretty much any other place in the country. I think the biggest problem that they usually have is they're always trying to figure out, like, what are the rules to buy in America? Because you got to remember, a lot of places don't even have deeds. That's actually a big problem. Like, I'll get people from, like, the Middle East and some Eastern European countries, and like, we want to make sure we get a deed. It's like a big question they get because, like, I guess in other countries, you, like, sell the place, but there's no, like, real transfer of ownership other than like a piece of paper that you write and you're like, hey, this is now yours. And then somebody else comes in and says, hey, that's actually mine. And people, that's a big problem, is that things kind of go away. That they actually say, you may have bought it, but you didn't legally buy it. So most of my clients, international clients' questions revolve around, how do I figure out that this is legally my property? It's not so much insurance, it's figuring out legally whose place is it. Let's see here. How do you advise international clients differently than domestic clients? I just walk them through what the American policies are. Taxes is a huge one. They want to know what's happening with taxes. I walk them through the process of what it is, especially if it's their first purchase in America. I have a lot of people first purchase in America. Those people are usually people who came here on a work visa or a student visa and then got a job here, so they're staying here. And they've only been in America for 4 years, and all they know is Chicago, or maybe they went to U of I or UIC or something like that. And, now they're kind of quote unquote stuck here, so they want to buy, but they're not familiar with like how that works, and they're not citizens, but they're trying to get their citizenship. So it's really just, educating them on like what the process is. Do you use different attorneys or lenders for international deals? No, unless they don't speak the language and they need somebody who can speak that language, and they only want to work with an attorney that can speak that language. It's the only way I would do that. And when it comes to lenders, it would have to do once in a blue moon. They don't have any assets in America, meaning they have no money here, they don't have a job here, they don't have a bank account here, and they want to get a loan. Well, if you want to get a loan and don't have any assets or anything here, that's not going to happen here in America because you don't have it. So we have to find an international-based lender that can, give you a loan for that. Let's see here. Is buying in Chicago a good investment? I would say it's pretty good. It's definitely not as lucrative as other cities. I mean, in New York, you could buy something and go up 10%. 12 months later, it can also go down 10% 12 months later. So it's Chicago's more like a tortoise. That's what I tell people. Think of Chicago like a slow growth, slow and steady. It's like an annuity. It's going to go up 1% to 3%. There's nothing sexy about buying in Chicago. The upside is that like it's slow and steady growth. The downside is there's no home run. But the good thing is we don't really go down that much. Other cities have like, that 10% swing, good or bad. We just don't have as much of a swing. So some people want to buy real estate though and have it be like, they want to kind of be like Vegas, where they could put their whole money on black and see what happens. So we just don't have that type of swing. And I think that's a reason why some people don't like Chicago as an investment. Are most international buyers purchasing investments properties rent out, or do they simply sit empty? Both. So again, people want to get money to America. How do you get money to America? You buy real estate and you let it sit there. Another one is they just want to buy it as a pure investment, rent it out, have it sit there, collect money, just add it to the portfolio. Most of the places, if they're buying like a high-end property, and then take a loss, but they don't care. They just want to have money here in America and have another asset. Are taxes different for international buyers? Yeah, there's some different tax laws out there. The main thing is that Chicago's taxes don't make any sense, and we've talked about this in numerous podcasts. So a lot of people, internationally speaking, I would probably say like half my conversation is about taxes. Like people do not understand taxes, and because our taxes make no sense, I get very frustrated, which is why, Kagi and them should be coming up with different ways to create. I mean, why Chicago doesn't have a set tax rate makes no sense. But, for the time being, it is what it is. So we're going to have to spend a bunch of money, a bunch of time talking about taxes. Do you ever have a language barrier with international buyers? All the time. Literally all the time. We have like Google Translate up pretty much at all times. And that's how we communicate, especially with people from like China or like the Eastern Europe, because a lot of them don't even, I'll have clients that literally don't speak a lick of English at all, not a single word. And guess what, guys? I barely speak English as it is, so I definitely can't speak any other languages. So we'll just, communicate through Google Translate. I'm really good with hand gestures, and that's kind of like what we do. How does the transfer of money and funds work on international deals? If you're getting money out of China, only so much can go out. Only $250,000 a couple can go out. So they have to pay off somebody at one of their provinces and government to get the money here. A lot of times, if you're in China, you bank at the Bank of China. I feel like I could teach an economics course on how to get money out of different countries. And I'll tell you right now, guys, I'm a D and C, maybe C student, mostly D student. So the fact that I can understand the economic situation of how money comes out of other countries is pretty crazy. But I will tell you, most of the time to get money out of China, you got to put it to Citibank, and then you go from Citibank to Hong Kong Citibank, and then Hong Kong Citibank over to America. A lot of times, international wires above $300,000 are going to be held because it's going to be blocked by the government because of course, terrorism, right? You can't just wire $20 million to America and not think the government's not going to put some sort of hold on it. They do watch for that sort of thing, guys, because there is something called money laundering. And there is some stuff called, they're just trying to protect America. And there's also things coming, like a lot of times, there's Muslim banks for America where they don't, a lot of people get them out of this Muslim bank in the Middle East. And it's because in the Muslim religions, they don't believe in paying interest. So you have to get a loan from there. So it comes from there and then comes to America. And sometimes when that bank wires the money to the States, there could be a hold on it for a few weeks because they have to see what's going on with it. So, there's a lot of different laws out there. And the main thing to know is I always say, is your money in the States? If it's not in the States, where is it? No matter where it is, what is your plan to get your money from here to there? And in what time frame you're going to do it? And if you want to buy ASAP, we need to get the money here today. So the first thing I talk to about international buyers, if your money's not in America, get it to America now. Open up a bank account, wire the money in. Let's cross that bridge first. because I've had many deals die over the fact that people couldn't get their money to America. That's actually a huge problem and a good question on it. What are the biggest challenge for international deals? A lot of times it has to do with citizenship, getting the money here, language barriers, not understanding the process. It's just more of like a cultural difference. I mean, think about it, guys. If you went to another country that you've never been to before and you're like, hey, let's buy some real estate, things are done differently. Not everybody does everything like America does, guys. And I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. It just, shit's different. And people don't understand it. And sometimes if you don't speak the same language, it can be difficult. And that's the biggest challenge. What are the first things you like to share when meeting international clients? How the process works. How the process works. They got to understand the process, because everybody does things differently, and a lot of people think it's going to be done the way they do. Luckily for myself, I do so much damn international sales that depending on what country you're from, I already know what I have to deal with. So I'm like, hey, in India, I know that they have buildable and unbuildable square footage, okay? So they base their pricing off of not only the buildable square footage, but the unbuildable square footage, okay? And everything is based off of square footage. Now in Chicago, we don't measure square footage, so I make sure that I tell them that. Because if they're talking to their families in India, they gotta know that, because that deal could die